Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Ron Paul FLIX Show. I'm the founder of Ron Paul FLIX and the host of the show, Israel Anderson. So on tonight's show, we talk to Dr. Thomas Woods about why Catholics should not be voting for the Catholic in the race, Rex Santorum, but instead should be voting for Dr. Ron Paul. But before we get to that, yesterday, in a congressional hearing, Ron Paul got his opportunity again to grill Ben Bernanke over the dollar. He held up something akin to this, a metallic object which most of us probably know was an ounce of silver, but it wasn't exactly this coin in particular. It was something a little bit different. And my next guest is going to tell us exactly what that was. But first, let's go to Ron Paul FLIX. Let's scroll down and find that clip. Here it is. Ron Paul highlights from the financial services hearing. And let's take a look at what Ron Paul had to say to Ben Bernanke. I'll see you on the other side.
Dr. Paul, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bernanke, if you don't mind, would you tell me whether or not you do your own shopping at the grocery store?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you're aware of the prices. But you know, this argument that the prices are going up about 2%, nobody believes it. You know, and the old CPI says prices are going up at 9%. So they believe this. And people on fixed incomes, they're really hurting. The middle class is really hurting because their inflation rate is very much higher than the government tries to tell them. And that's why they lose trust in government. But you know, this whole idea about prices and debasement of currency, if you loan me $100 and in 2 years from now I gave you 90 back, you'd be pretty upset. But we hand back money back that's worth 10 or 15 or 20% less, and nobody seems to be able to do anything about it. It's very upsetting. But it's theft. If I don't give you your full $100 back, if you loan me $100, I'm stealing $10 from you. So somebody's stealing wealth, and this is very upsetting. But you know, in January at one of your press conferences, you said that you sort of poked a little bit of fun at people to downplay the 2% inflation rate. But if you say it's 2 and I say it's 9, it's compromised for the sake of argument that it's 5%. That you said that if it doesn't hurt you unless you're one of those people who stick their money in the mattress. But where are you going to put it? Are you going to put it in a CD and not make any money at all? So this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't encourage the savings, and it just discourages people. But I do want to make a point about prices, because prices go up. That, to me, is not the inflation. It is one of the bad consequences of the inflation, which comes from the increase in the money supply, and that's one of the bad effects. But, you know, you took over the Fed in 2006. I have a silver ounce here, and this ounce of silver back in 2006 would buy over 4 gallons of gasoline. Today it'll buy almost 11 gallons of gasoline. That's preservation of value, and that's what the market has always said should be money. Money comes into effect in a natural way, not in an edict, not by fiat, by governments declaring it is money. But why is it that we can't consider, you know, the two of us, an option? You love paper money. I think money should be honest, constitutional, it's still on the books, gold and silver, legal tender. Why don't we use it? But why don't we allow currencies to run parallel? They do around the world. One of my options, you know, as much as I would like to do something with the Fed, I say the Fed's going to self-destruct eventually anyway when the money's gone. But why wouldn't we legalize competing currencies? Why couldn't people put this in a mattress and get 4 or 5 times much of the value in a few years? So the record of what you've done in the last 6 years is destroy the value of real money, of paper money. At the same time, real money is preserved. But a competing currency, we already have a silver eagle. It's legal tender for $1. And some people say, well, it's legal tender, it's $1, it's on the books, and they use it, and they get into big trouble. The government comes and closes them down, and you can get arrested for that. But what would be wrong with talking about parallel currency and competing currencies? This is something that Hayek talked about, something that I think would be a compromise, and that we could work along those views.
First of all, good to see you again, Congressman Paul. Just one word on the inflation. Of course, those numbers are constructed by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, not by the Fed. They're independently constructed, and I think they're done in a very serious and thoughtful way. On alternative currencies, nobody prevents you from holding silver or gold if you want to. It's perfectly legal to do that. And you're also it's also perfectly fine to hold other currencies, euros or yen or whatever else. So in that respect, you can do that, and I'd be happy to talk to you about
But
other options.
Mr. Chairman, that's not money. I mean, when you pay taxes to buy a coin, or you have capital gains tax, when it's not, if you have to settle a lawsuit, it's always settled in depreciating Federal Reserve notes. It's never settled in the real contract. So that's nothing near money when it's illegal to use it. But to do it, you'd have to repeal the legal tender laws. You would have to legalize this. You'd have to get rid of the sales taxes. You'd have to get rid of the capital gains taxes. People, even in Mexico, they're talking about this. They're trying to have competing currencies. They've been wiped out too many times with inflation and wipe out the middle class. They're allowing people to start to save in a silver currency. So I hope we move along in that direction, because there shouldn't be any overwhelming changes all of a sudden, that there could be a transition. People could vote on it. Maybe they'll give up on the Federal Reserve note and vote for real money.
I'd be very happy to talk to you about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And welcome back. And you see on that clip there, Ron Paul was holding up what looked like a silver coin. It wasn't actually a silver coin. There's a slight difference between a silver coin and a silver round. I have in my pocket here a silver coin, which is produced by the US government, and it's called a silver eagle. Now this is a little different to the one that Ron Paul had in his hand, and I've asked Megan Duffield, who is the marketing director of Silver Circle, to come on the show tonight and tell us what exactly did Ron Paul have in his hand?
Well, I about fell out of my chair at work today whenever I came across the photos from the hearing. And what he was actually holding was a Silver Circle, which is our 1 ounce minted rounds that we put together for our movie. It's, a promotional tool as well as an educational tool as we progress through our film production and as we're on our way to the release of the film this year.
So tell us just briefly, what's the difference between a silver coin such as this and a silver round, such as what you have in your hand there?
Well, a coin is minted by the U.S. government, so it's going to have some sort of value printed onto it. For an eagle or anything like that, it'll have some dollar amount. This silver round, however, is just a pure piece of silver, and it could be used as a currency if you would like to do that. However, I wouldn't tell government that you're doing that. But it could just be used for an exchange as a commodity, investment, etc. So it's just a 1 ounce piece of silver.
The only difference really between the two is this one is sanctioned by the US government, by the US Mint, and yours is printed by a third party, but they both contain 1 full troy ounce of pure silver.
Right, same amount of metal.
Okay. So Ron Paul at this hearing was explaining to Bernanke the price of gasoline and how it has changed according to the value of the dollar, but not changed according to the price or the weight of silver. So most people really don't understand that Federal Reserve notes aren't actually money. Explain that for us. What is money and why aren't Federal Reserve notes money?
Well, it definitely depends on what economic theory you subscribe to, but according to Ron Paul, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners out there and followers of Ron Paul FLIX would say that money has to have some sort of intrinsic value. It needs to be divisible. It needs to have some sort of use in the marketplace, perhaps. It needs to be scarce. All of these things are some characteristics of what money really is. And paper, unfortunately, it might be pretty divisible, but it's definitely not a good way to run a currency system, especially when you can just make it out of thin air.
Right, and of course, and although most people would say paper money, the Federal Reserve notes have no intrinsic value, they do. Very, very, very tiny amount, about 1/100th of a cent of intrinsic value, and that is it. So really, if the monetary system were to collapse, the intrinsic value would mean, you would need an awful lot to buy a loaf of bread, because nobody wants paper, and paper has other sources. So tell us a little bit about Silver Circle. What are you guys doing? You said something about a film. Tell us about the film.
Right. Well, we're in the midst of producing an animated feature-length film called Silver Circle, along with a full-length graphic novel as well. But the whole story is set in 2019 after a severe economic collapse, and there's a group of rebels who are trying to destroy the Federal Reserve Bank, or who they believe is the culprit for the economic calamity that's happening at this point in time. So in the movie, prices are 20 times what they are today. The dollar is no longer the world's reserve currency. And the one good thing I think in the movie is that marijuana is now legal by 2019. But aside from that, everything's pretty much going down the tubes, and this group of rebels get together and start producing their own money underground to fight the Federal Reserve and combat inflation.
That's very interesting. So when are we likely to see the film released?
Well, we've been working on it for about a year and a half, and we're looking to do a 17-city release this August, perhaps with some screenings prior to that in some special places, and hopefully go right out to DVD after that as well.
Wow. All right. Now, I'm sure a lot of people, including myself, would like to get a hold of one of those Silver Circle rounds that you have, because if Ron Paul was holding it, I'd like to be able to hold it too. How do people get a hold of them?
Well, how Ron Paul got a hold of it was when we were in Houston last year. I actually was having a conversation with him, telling him about the movie, and I handed him one. However, not everyone's going to be that lucky. I'm not just going to start handing out 1-ounce rounds to everybody. So you can get onto our website, which is silvercirclemovie.com/store, or you can click on the store in the top menu bar, and you'll see our Rebel rounds listed there, and it'll navigate you to the site where you can purchase a ounce for yourself.
Fantastic.
Or more.
So we'll put that link right up on the screen for you there and in the video description below. And go and get your own, or at least buy some silver. It's funny, when you buy one piece of silver, you tend to start collecting more. It's quite an interesting thing the way that happens. Thanks so much, Megan, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And we'll be right back with Thomas Woods.
Thank you.
I want to take a brief moment to tell you about this amazing new website that's going to help us to get out the vote for Ron Paul. And this is simply Ron Paul Volunteer. You can find it at ronpaulvolunteer.com. Now, Ron Paul Volunteer is a different site to anything else that's come before. You can sign up over here, and what it's going to enable you to do is you can come up here and choose your state. I use my little mouse down here to select it, and once this loads here, you'll see a map of the country here. Choose the state you're in. I'm in Colorado here, and you can then register in this area to make sure that you can get involved. You can go down as granular as your precinct. You can look up people once you've. We have a little system here where you can become a local organizer. Once you become a local organizer, we kind of do a little bit of background checking on you to make sure you're not someone from another campaign that's trying to cause some damage. But once we give you access as an organizer, you can get in there at your precinct level. You can look up the people around you. Even on a Google map, you can zoom right into your street. You can see the registered voters, both Republican and Democrat, if you're in an open primary state. And you can select those people and you can make contact with them. And you'll be able to see at a glance if those people have already been contacted, so we don't end up duplicating other people's efforts and annoying people. Please get along to the site, register right now. Super Tuesday is coming up, and this is truly going to help us in a very big way. You can email people if they've provided their email address in their voter registration. You can text message people. You can call them, which is the best way always. Call them and ask them to come out and vote on caucus or primary day, depending on what your state is, and vote for Ron Paul. So please get along here right now, ronpaulvolunteer.com. And let's get back to the rest of the show. And welcome back to the Ron Paul FLIX Show. My special guest tonight has a degree in history from Harvard. He has a master's and a PhD from Columbia. He is the author of 11 books, including the New York Times bestseller Meltdown. Most recently, he's introduced Rollback, Repealing Big Government Before the Coming Fiscal Collapse, and Nullification, How to Resist Federal Tyranny in the 21st Century. It is my pleasure to introduce this interview with Tom Woods.
Thanks, the pleasure is mine.
Now, I asked you to come on the show because obviously being a Catholic that has written a lot of books on Catholicism, you have something to say about this very prominent Catholic in the presidential race right now. And you've done some videos and you've written some blog posts on the guy. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to address the Catholics that are watching our show tonight and maybe rehash a little bit about what you were going over in the videos, why people should be preferring Ron Paul instead of Rick Santorum.
Well, the frustrating thing is that with the exception of Pat Buchanan, for the most part, Catholics who are in public life, who are right of center politically, are almost all neoconservatives. I mean, almost all. So it's exceptionally frustrating dealing with this problem. So that means there's a preference for the Santorums of the world over the Ron Pauls, because Santorum fits into their worldview. He fits into their foreign policy, all of it. And Ron is a traditional, old-style constitutionalist, limited government, decentralist, modest foreign policy, the president as someone who humbly executes the laws rather than imposing his grandiose vision on the country. And this doesn't resonate well with the neoconservative mind. And unfortunately, the George Weigels, the Michael Novaks of the world, they just don't like the Ron Paul message. So what I've tried to do is make what seems to me to be a pretty obvious case for Ron from the point of view of Catholics. So I did this video that you mentioned. You can see it at, I have a page, tomwoods.com/Catholics for Paul, with some resources on it, including that video. But I mean, you look through this guy's record in terms of, there's an important Christian principle of subsidiarity that says that you don't just refer every task to the federal government or some distant bureaucracy. You start with the local unit, with the family, the community, the parish, the civic group, whatever. And if that institution is incapable of handling the problem, then you go up to a higher level. You don't just start with the federal government. But if you look at education and all these other things that Santorum has voted to spend money on, it totally flips this important teaching on its head, whereas Ron has supported always the idea that the parents are the primary educators of the children, that he's been the greatest champion of homeschooling and all that other stuff. But for me, I'll tell you, that the key thing that frustrates me about Santorum and the Catholics who are supporting him is the foreign policy issue. That when you look at John Paul II and Benedict XVI, these popes have been outspoken in terms of these wars are unjust. They can't be justified. In fact, Benedict XVI, when he was still Cardinal Ratzinger, said that under modern conditions, he said it's practically impossible to imagine any war satisfying the just war criteria. Right. And yet people are jumping on board as if George W. Bush is a better theologian than their own popes. And Santorum is just, supports all this stuff. He even in one of the debates said that installing the Shah of Iran and imposing him on the poor people of that country was an exercise in defending freedom. I mean, if you want to vote for a George Orwell novel, then go right ahead. But if you want to vote for a president of the United States, one is staring you right in the face.
Now, it seems to me that Santorum is almost taking this a little personally, Tom, because he has said on the campaign trail, and people have dug up videos from just a few years ago, where he has really come out against any kind of libertarianism and has tried to promote the idea that traditional conservatism is as far away from libertarianism as possible. And yet it was Reagan who said that libertarianism is the heart and soul of conservatism. Where is Rick getting this idea that we should be moving away from liberty and towards, what some are saying is almost a theocratical position?
Well, I think he's concluded sort of along the lines of Edmund Burke that we should not be excited about giving people the liberty to do as they please until we discover what it is that it pleases them to do. And so I think he thinks that if we regiment people a bit more and we toughen them up morally one way or another through exhortation and coercion, we can make them into better people. But of course, what you wind up doing is making them into hypocrites. That morality has to be chosen freely. And a free society involves a robust civil society that inculcates moral principles into the public, not a bunch of creeps in government. I mean, really, you think of Washington, D.C. as going to be a great moral guidance post for the general public in terms of marriage.
Let me play devil's advocate, though, because people are going to come back and say, if we allow people to use drugs, for instance, and we know that Ron Paul vehemently wants to draw down the drug war. So people's argument is, if we allow people the free reign of access to drugs, drug use is going to go up and it's going to hurt society in the long run. So better to prevent them from getting it. What's the response?
Well, several responses. One is that it's not like we have to just grope in the dark speculating about this. It's not entirely theoretical. You look at Portugal, what they've done in decriminalizing whole classes of drugs, and they have seen drug use and addiction and problems related to it cut pretty much in half.
Massive.
Whereas, let's suppose they had that policy and drug use tripled. Well, you better believe that drug prohibitionists would point to that and say, you see, we warned you this would happen. But when the opposite happens, we don't hear anything from those people. The second thing would be, what is the most humane way to deal with somebody who's got a drug problem? Is it to throw him in prison where he is certain to be raped violently? I mean, let's be blunt about it here. Is that the most humane? Is that the Christian approach? Or is the Christian approach a compassionate one? And then, moreover, I give in my most recent book, Rollback, I give an example of in San Diego, they had coordination between, this is years ago, all the different arms of law enforcement. They pinpointed all the heroin dealers in San Diego. And one day they did a raid and they shut every single one of them down. And for about a week, indeed, it was difficult in San Diego to find any heroin. But after about 2 weeks and then a month, things were right back. I mean, no kidding, we're right back to exactly the way they were before, except this time the authorities had no idea who the heroin dealers were. So in other words, when something is futile, then if it can't be done, then it can't be done. If they can't keep the drugs out of their own prisons, then we have to realize we can't abdicate our authority as parents and as families and churches. That's where the authority should lie to deal with these sorts of problems. And we should also remember what Thomas Aquinas said in his treatise on law. He's asked the question, or he's asking himself the question, should all vices be criminalized? I mean, this is the heart of the matter, right? Should every vice be a crime in the eye of the law? And Aquinas said no. He said, basically, the things that should be criminalized are the things that make the normal intercourse of society impossible. Murder and theft and fraud, I mean, things that involve, in effect, trespass on someone else's person or property. Now, I'm not saying Aquinas was a full-fledged libertarian, but that answer is a very good answer. And in fact, Aquinas even said, of course, Aquinas believes that prostitution is a grave sin, but he also believed that, they don't call it the world's oldest profession for nothing. It's not something that you can stamp out just through the law. Civil society deals with these things. It winds up in the bad part of town or whatever. But the point is that he said that these sorts of vices can be tolerated when, in fact, criminalizing them leads to even worse social outcomes than tolerating but morally exhorting people against them.
Right, which is exactly what we've seen with the drug war. And now more people are dying as a result of the drug war than the drugs themselves. And so we are ruining people's lives all over the place. And so I guess it comes back to the family and the church society has to be the pressure on people to prevent them from using these substances rather than the government coming, because it simply doesn't work. So, I mean, to Santorum supporters that might be watching this, hopefully we'll get a few here and there, what would you say to them, if you could, as to rethink going after Ron Paul instead of Rick Santorum?
Well, I think Santorum is just part of the machine. And I think any Catholic who is politically aware at all has to have, frankly, a deep-seated loathing for the American political machine. It is immoral through and through. And Santorum has played the game completely in terms of his votes and the spending. And I think it is a moral issue. I think the Federal Reserve's a moral issue. I mean, the Bible has standards about honesty in money. And this is just completely ignored by every other candidate. There are standards that have to be met for the justice in war. And the popes dramatically disagree with Santorum on that. He is not going to. The fact is, we are facing. It's not that the economy is just not a family issue. I mean, please, that is the family issue. Absolutely. And we are heading for a major, major crisis here. And there is no credibility that Santorum has on these issues. He's not going to cut the budget. He's not going to fix any of these problems. We're going to continue heading to oblivion with this guy in charge. We'll have the currency will, if not collapse, then fall sharply. Households are going to be stretched. Unemployment is going to be very substantial, and he's not going to know what to do other than slap a few more tariffs on. He's utterly clueless. He has no idea what caused the financial crisis. He didn't see it coming. He doesn't know how to respond to it. These are issues where Ron Paul, who is as decent a man as you could ask for, has been spot on. He predicted the crisis. He's a decent family man, married for 55 years, an OBGYN, delivered 4,000 babies, been a great spokesman for pro-life, wrote a whole book on abortion in the 1980s, Abortion and Liberty. He is a great moral example, the way he leads his own life. And he's somebody who, he's not an ego case. He doesn't say, I, and when I'm president, and I'm so great, and I did this, and I did that. He is the absolute model of humility, who teaches the idea of the golden rule in personal behavior and in the government's behavior and how it treats everybody else in the world. You are not going to see somebody like this in politics, perhaps ever again. This is exceedingly rare that we have this incredible honor to support somebody like this. And I would urge you to be fair, not get your information from the media. You're not supposed to trust them anyway, right? You don't trust the media 9 times out of 10. Why do you trust them when they tell you about Ron Paul? Right. Just be fair. Head over to tomwoods.com/Catholics4Paul and just take the 10 minutes to look through that material and ask yourself if you've really made the right decision, or if in fact the right decision is the one that previously you had spurned.
Right. And, you know, this is almost a moot point at the same time, because as we see Santorum in the polls, polling against Obama, he's not attracting the independents, he's not attracting Democrats, and there's a whole group of the GOP that he's not attracting either. And so it doesn't look like, even if he was the Republican nominee, that he would stand any chance whatsoever winning against Obama in the general election. But
no, Obama would just grab the whole youth vote all over again, and it would be a repeat of 2008. Whereas Ron has shown he can grab that youth vote, he can get that enthusiasm up, and if it is the general election, I think these kids will actually go out and vote when they see what's actually at stake.
Absolutely. Tom Woods, thank you so much for coming on our debut show. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Israel. Always a pleasure.